So this is number 19 of civics questions worth asking. You can see up here that it's, should elected officials follow public opinion or their own judgment? Well, as a government and civics teacher, I spent a lot of time reminding my kids, my students, that civics is more than just passing the Constitution test. It really comes down to understanding power and your rights and your responsibilities, and also the rules of self-government as we live in a representative democracy or a republic. And so today's question, should elected officials follow public opinion or their own judgment? That's one of the classic questions when it comes to studying what a republic is. Because when we elect someone to public office, what exactly are we asking them to do? Are we asking them to vote exactly the way most of their constituents want? Or are we asking them to study the issue, use their judgment, and make the best decision they believe is best? And that answer is not quite as simple, because in a representative style government, elected officials are supposed to represent the people. And so that does mean that public opinion matters. And a representative who completely ignores the people is not really representing them. And so citizens have every right to contact officials, attend meetings, organize petitions, to vote, to protest, write letters, send emails, and just basically make their views known. That's all part of self-government. But representation does not always mean simply taking a poll and voting with the majority every time. Sometimes elected officials have access to information the public may not have. And sometimes they have to study complicated issues in greater detail. And, well, sometimes they have to think about long-term consequences or the constitutional limitations, budget realities, minority rights, public safety, legal responsibilities, on and on and on. And that's where the judgment comes into play. This is often described as the difference between a style of public official who is a delegate or a trustee. A delegate really sees the job as carrying out the wishes of the people who elected them. They have been delegated the authority. A trustee sees the job as using their best judgment on behalf of the people who elected them. Now, there is this combination, this chimera, where most elected officials probably do a little bit of both. On some issues, they may follow public opinion rather closely. On others, they may believe it's their responsibility to make a difficult decision, even if it's unpopular, against the wishes of the folks back home. And that can be kind of frustrating for voters, but it can also have a degree of necessity to it. Because a republic is not designed to be government by instant reaction. Now, public opinion can have wisdom within it, but it also can be emotional or incomplete, can be misinformed, or even just temporary in its nature. And a crowd may demand action quickly, but government still has to follow the Constitution and to protect rights and to consider consequences the public may not be aware of. And at the same time, elected officials should not use judgment as an excuse to become arrogant or disconnected, because there is a difference between leadership and just out and out ignoring people. There is also a difference between explaining your reasoning and acting as if voters do not matter. And that balance can be kind of a difficult juggling act, because if elected officials only follow public opinion, they may become afraid to make the hard decisions. They may chase popularity instead of doing what is responsible. They may also avoid telling voters the truth when the truth is inconvenient. But if elected officials only follow their own judgment, they may actually drift away from the people that they happen to represent, those folks back home. They may start to believe that winning an election gave them personal ownership of the office. And of course, it doesn't. Public office is a trust. The people lend power to officials for a limited amount of time. And that power should be used with humility, accountability, and respect for the citizens who granted it. So, what should voters expect? They should expect that elected officials will listen to them. They should expect that the elected officials to explain the issues, and they should expect them to study the issues. They should expect the elected official to respect constitutional limits, and they should expect them to consider both majority opinion and minority rights. They should also expect them to be honest about trade-offs. And when officials make decisions voters disagree with, voters have the right to hold those officials accountable, because that's what elections are for. A representative does not have to agree with every constituent on every issue, but a representative should be able to explain why they made a decision and accept the political consequences of that choice. That's part of the responsibility of leadership within a republic. So, should elected officials follow public opinion or their own judgment? And the real answer, or the best answer, I guess, is that they need a little bit of both. They should listen carefully to the people, because the authority to govern comes from the people, the consent of the governed. But they should also use judgment, because governing requires more than just reacting to the loudest voices of the moment. So the real civic question is not whether representatives should obey every opinion poll or ignore public opinion entirely. The real question is whether they can listen to the people, respect the Constitution, use honest judgment, and remain accountable to the choices that they make. And that is what representation requires. And I thought this was another civics question that was worth asking. Thanks again for hanging around. Once again, I'll make one of these shills here and be like, hey, if you think somebody needs to hear this kind of information, please feel free to share. I'm trying to come at this from a position of being in the middle of the road, and not trying to inject stuff from either side of the spectrum. So I'm trying to do my best. Treating it kind of like a classroom. You're not supposed to have that undue influence on kids. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I appreciate your interaction.